Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at the Magicka Dragonknight for the Flames of Ambition DLC. So Magicka Dragonknight in terms of damage output is a bit behind the other classes. I think Magicka Necromancer and Nightblade and Sorcerer are pretty much the top three at the moment, followed by Warden and maybe then the Dragonknight. So what I'm doing with this build, which is especially for trials, but don't worry, I will also show you setups for dungeons, or if you don't want to do the buffing thing, which I'm about to explain, and also for solo content. So we'll just quickly have a look at the character stats here. Now remember, this is a buff build. You will be a complete buff machine, buffing everybody's damage way higher than it normally would be. So what we're looking at here is with 64 points into Magicka, we're at 33,600 Magicka, 22,000 health, and 14,000 stamina. Magicka recovery is super high with 1,700, and our spell damage is 4,100 with an 48% chance to crit. So, obviously the crit chance is not the highest, but that's because we're wearing all these buff sets. It will go way higher if you swap out to the usual dungeon setup, which you'd run with a set like Mother Sorrow, False Gods, but we'll get into that later. Using the Thief Mundustone, and for food, we're just going with Witch Mother's Potent Brew, which gives us a little bit Magicka health and Magicka recovery, which is very nice. And then for the potions, we're using the spell power pots or alliance spell drops. You can buy these now with alliance points. They're the same thing than the craftable spell power pots. They give you major intellect, which increases your Magicka recovery, sorcery, and prophecy, increasing your spell damage and spell critical. So that's what you want to run for food and everything. Now let's get straight into the skills we're using. On our front bar, Molten Whip will be our spammable. There's options for this as well if you don't want to be in close combat, but more if you have to fight ranged. However, the whip is pretty much our spammable. It looks like this. You're just beating the enemy with your whip. It deals 8,700 flame damage, and if you strike an enemy that is immobile or stunned, you set them off balance. Plus, while slotted, whenever you activate a different Ardent Flame ability, you gain a stack of Seething Fury, which increases the damage of the next whip. This will be important when we get into the rotation. So if we're casting a couple other Ardent Flame abilities, the next whip will be the backflip one, and the backflip one will do more damage. All of these are on fire. Nice. So this is what we're using as a spammable. This comes from the Ardent Flame skill lines. The first thing you unlock is called Molten Whip. Starts out as Lava Whip, just morph it to Molten Whip. Next thing we've got on the front bar is our shield, because, well, if you are in a super well set up trials group and you really trust your healers, you don't have to run a shield. You can swap something else in for that, but for most content I prefer using the shield, and this is from the light armor skill line. Starts out as Amulet, and you can morph it to Harness Magicka. All it does is pretty much give you a 10k damage shield for 6 seconds, capped at 50% of your max health. And then when you activate the shield, the damage you take will absorb and you will restore Magicka. So this is just a nice thing to protect ourselves. The next thing we've got is from the Earth and Heart skill line. The last thing you unlock there starts as Ash Cloud, morph it to Eruption. This is a big AoE field which reduces the movement speed and also deals flame damage every second. And then it also deals 6k flame damage immediately about. It's pretty expensive, but it lasts for 18 seconds, so we only have to cast it every second rotation. It looks like this. It's just this big cloud that deals flame damage in area of effect. So it's a nice AoE skill for us. The next thing we've got is from the Ardent Flame skill line again. It's called Burning Embers. Starts as Searing Strike. And this will do flame damage over time for 14 seconds. So enemies that are hit by the initial hit are afflicted with the burning status effect. This is very important for our sets, because we do want to apply status effects and dots on the enemy as much as possible. It just looks like this. This is Flame Claw, and then you can see the target is burning. Plus, a nice side effect is if you do it again to a burning target, you will heal for the damage you do. So this is also a bit of an option to self-heal. If you have a burning target and you're low on health, just slash it again with the burning embers and you will heal yourself. And then we're going for two major skill line skills. One of them is Scalding Rune, the other one is Shooting Star. That's the ultimate. The major skill line takes a while to unlock. If you don't have that yet, the Scalding Rune, you could run Consuming Trap, which would be the morph of Soul Trap, in place until you level it up. However, I would strongly advise you to level it up because Scalding Rune also does flame damage, and we are a flame damage machine, the Magicka Dragonknight. So, yeah, this is what you want, really. It's a very strong dot. It's a good thing to have it on the bar because the major skill passives will increase our Magicka and other stuff for every major skill we have on the front bar. Hence, we're running these here. This is pretty much just a rune that you put on the ground, and enemies that will get trapped inside of it will take the flame damage over 14 seconds. So it looks like this. Place the rune on the ground, and then the enemy afflicted by it, as you can see here, takes down 12 seconds. It actually got all of them, which is pretty nice, so it's a pretty cool AoE skill as well. And they're all taking flame damage over time now. And then we've got Shooting Star, which is the ultimate. This is the morph of Meteor. I used to run Ice Comet, but I prefer Shooting Star really because I think it's the nicer morph. This is just a big comet that crashes down from the sky and deals 14 or 15k about flame damage to all the enemies in the area. It also knocks them down and stuns them for 2 seconds. And then after the impact, enemies in the target area take flame damage again for 13 seconds. But the nice thing about this morph is you generate 11 ultimate for each enemy hit by the initial blast. So usually we're always using the backbar ultimate, but if you're in a big trash fight, like say in the beginning of Hell Ra, and all the enemies are neatly stacked together, you can just blast your Shooting Star in there, and chances are you'll get a lot of ultimate back, so you'll probably have a second one ready before the trash fight even finishes. It's really nice ultimate for the front bar, plus also the major skill passives, which increases for having the two skills on the bar. Our max Magicka is increased by 4% on the front bar. It's very nice also. So that's why we're using these on the front bar. Okay, going on to the back bar. The first thing we've got is Barb Trap. This is so we can get our minor force bonus. It starts out as Trap Beast. You can morph it to Barb Trap. It's from the Fighters Guild skill line. And it deals physical damage over 18 seconds. But the reason we're using it is because it grants us minor force, increasing our critical damage done by 10% for the duration. So we definitely want this buff, so always keep your Barb Trap up if you're in close range anyway. If you have to fight from range and you want to get minor force, you can't obviously use this one. You'd have to go with the Psijic Order skill of Channel Acceleration, which will also grant you minor force for 36 seconds. It has a cast time though, so it's a bit... in some content it's fairly cool to use it, but if you're in a rotation at a boss and you have to keep your rotation up, it can be a bit disturbing. However, these are your two options. Since our main spammable, the Molten Whip, is close range anyway though, I would say you're most likely to be in close range, so Barb Trap is the nicer option for the Magicka Dragonknight. Unless you have to use another spammable, a ranged one like Force Pulse, then you could swap this out to Channeled Acceleration, but we'll get into that later with the optional skills and stuff. Okay, next up is Flames of Oblivion. This is the last thing you'll unlock in the Ardent Flame tree. This will just grant you an aura, which launches a fireball at 2 enemies every 5 seconds, dealing about 6k flame damage. Plus, while slotted, you gain Major Prophecy and Major Savagery, increasing your spell and weapon critical ratings. Now, this is already in our potions, which is why I've slotted it on the back bar. So this is not really the reason. It's just a nice dot, or like not a dot, but it's a nice other thing that lasts for 15 seconds and just deals flame damage every 2 seconds. Then we've got the Molten Whip on the back bar again, so we can do the backflip whip, because it says while slotted whenever you activate another Ardent Flame ability. So we'll need to have this slotted on the back bar as well, if we want to take advantage of the stronger whip with the backflip. If you don't care about the backflip whip, you can do that as well. You might slot another skill here, something like Mystic Orb from the Undaunted skill line, or maybe a self-heal, whatever you prefer. Next up is Engulfing Flames, also from the Ardent Flame skill line. This is pretty much a fire breath that puts a dot on the enemy for 14 seconds, and over these 14 seconds you will deal 12k flame damage after dealing the initial 6k flame damage from the breath itself. Affected enemies take more damage from all flame damage attacks based on your offensive stats with a maximum of 10%, and we've got the current value of 10%, so this is very, very good for trial groups, and the reason pretty much people bring Magicka Dragonknights into endgame trials sometimes, because if everybody is using flame staves, and most of the Magicka abilities of other classes deal either magic or flame damage as well, or just really just by using the flame staves, also the light attacks you do in between each skill, they'll all be 10% more damage because it's flame damage, right? So this will boost the complete group's damage, and with the sets that are coming up, you will see that we will boost them even way further. Okay, last but not least is the Unstable Wall of Fire from the Destruction Staff skill line. This is pretty much a staple in every Magicka DPS's skill setup. It's just a big blockade you put down on the ground, and things inside of it will take damage over time in area of effect. For the ultimate that we're mostly going to be using when we're close ranged, Standard of Might, the Dragonknight standard morph, you call down a battle standard dealing flame damage every 1 second for 20 seconds and applying Major Defile to the enemies, reducing their healing received and health recovery by 16%. Plus, while you're standing inside the area, your damage done is increased by 15%, and your damage taken reduced by 15% as well. And also there's a synergy dealing flame damage that your group can take if you call the standard down. Plus, when you call it down, it also gives you a whole bunch of resources back, which is nice. So this is very nice for resource management and damage and granting synergies and debuffing the enemy and buffing yourself and doing flame damage. It's just very strong ultimate, so whenever you're in a fight where you can just stand in front of the boss close ranged and do damage, do your rotation, this is definitely the way to go for our ultimate. Okay, we'll have a quick look at the passives because it's pretty important to understand them. We've got Combustion, increases the damage of your burning status effects by 50% and also of your poison status effects. Now remember that Searing Strike, or Burning Embers as we've morphed it, will put the burning status effect on the boss, so you'll definitely want this. Also, when you apply burning to an enemy, you restore 500 Magicka. When you apply poison, you restore 500 stamina. It's also very nice for our stamina management, because every time we do that Burning Embers skill, we will restore Magicka as well. When you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, you reduce the enemy's movement speed. That's not necessary as a DPS, but it's nice to have because we do that all the time. Searing Heat increases the damage over time by your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 33%, and the duration by 4 seconds. We're using all of these skills, so you definitely want this as well. And then World in Ruin increases the damage of your flame area of effect abilities by 6%. Also very, very good for us. In Draconic Power, this is more of the tanking skill line, but it's nice for DPS as well, because increase the amount of damage you can block by 10%. This just helps us survive. While a Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received is increased. This helps us heal. Increases your health recovery for each ability slotted. Unfortunately, we do not actually actively use any of these, so this won't make any sense for us. Unless you are, though, doing solo content and you want to slot a self-heal, like the Coagulating Blood there. Or if you are using Burning Talons, which is also an option, because they do flame damage. However, I'd be a bit careful with that skill, because you might just CC enemies in place where the tank doesn't want them. And then here, just increased spell resistance by 3k. This is obviously also very nice for our survival. Earth and Heart increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%, which is very nice because we do use Eruption, so it will last longer. When you cast an ultimate ability, you restore health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost, and the Standard of Might is a quite expensive ultimate, so this is why we get so much resources back when we cast this ultimate. Mountain's Blessing. When you cast an Earth Knot ability, you and your group gain minor brutality, increasing the weapon damage. Now, if you're in a Magicka group, obviously the weapon damage is might not be that important, but if you're in a mixed group with some staminas, that can help them out as well. So I definitely get that. Plus, while if you are in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate, and generating ultimate is very nice for us. Then when you cast a non-stamina Earth and Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. This is a non-stamina Earth and Heart ability, so this applies to us as well. Probably might not need the stamina, but if you have to roll dodge or block, it's always nice to have more of any resource, really. Okay, Destruction Staff, you obviously want all of these. I'm not going to read them all out to you. You can read them yourselves, but there's some very important ones like this. Increases your chance to apply an elemental status effect by 100%, which will happen if you're using a flame staff with a flame glyph or even a poison on it or something. So you definitely want to get all of these as well. Light armor. We are wearing mostly light armor, so you definitely want to get all of these. These passives have been changed. They now have bonuses and penalties. But with the buff setup, we'll be running 7 pieces of light armor, which is very nice because we will get 6,500 spell penetration just from wearing these 7 pieces of light armor. We'll get an extra 1,500 spell critical rating, an extra 5k spell resistance, and an extra 28% magicka recovery. Plus, also reduces the cost, the magic cost of your abilities by 14%. So this is really, all of this is really good. First one is only effectiveness of snares, and the sprint cost is not so important. But you definitely want to get all of these. Medium armor. Sometimes I still run 5 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy. That's why I got these passives in there. The only important ones to get there are Windwalker and Athletics for the movement speed and the stamina recovery. And then in the heavy armor, I just got all of them. Just in case, I do run 2 heavy pieces of Medusa on the body, or Elfbane if it gets good again. So yeah, if you are running 7 light only and you really only want to run 7 light, so meaning in your buff setup you'll have light monster set, in your normal setup you'll have light monster set, and in your solo setup you'll also just run 7 pieces of light, then obviously you don't need to waste any points into any of this because it won't do anything for you. Okay, Fighters Guild. We are using Barb Trap, so I did get the first one, which reduces the cost of Barb Trap. This one, which will give me 3% more weapon damage. And then this one, I generate 3 ultimate whenever I kill an enemy. It only applies now with the Fighters Guild ability slotted, so if an enemy dies while I'm on my back bar, I'll get 3 ultimate. But it might happen, especially in trash fights, when you're doing Engulfing Flames and the blockade and everything. So why not? And then this, your Fighters Guild abilities deal an additional 20% damage to undead, dead, or werewolves. So the Barb Trap gets boosted a little bit. Banish the Wicked is the only one, also with the Intimidating Presence. These 2 are the only ones you really need, but the other ones are nice to have, because they're just slight buffs as well. Mage's Guild. We are using 2 skills on the front bar here. Degeneration is a good skill as well that you can swap in, so you definitely want to get all of these passives. This one reduces the magicka health cost of your Mage's Guild abilities by 15%, meaning our Scalding Rune will be 15% cheaper. This one increases the duration, meaning our Scalding Rune will last longer. This one increases our max magicka by 4% just for having these 2 abilities on the front bar. And then the last one, casting a Mage's Guild ability grants you Empower, increasing the damage of your light and heavy attacks by 40% for 3 seconds. So it's also very nice. After casting Scalding Rune or the Meteor, we gain Empower for 3 seconds, and it just is a little bit of a damage buff as well. So you definitely want to get all of these. Psijic Order. I hardly ever use Elemental Weapon on a Magicka Dragonknight, as you can see here. Also, Channeled Acceleration I don't really use so much, because most of the time I'm close ranged anyway, so I can put the Barb Trap down, and I don't need either of these skills, because the Molten Whip is just the better spammable in my opinion. However, if you are getting into situations where you have to fight from range, these two skills are nice options. So I would get that skill line if that's your main character, definitely, and get the passives as well. Undaunted, Mystic Orb is something you should definitely level, because there are a lot of trials in which the orbs just do so much damage and everybody can synergize them to get resources back. It's just one of the strongest skills for Magicka damage dealers at the moment in general. So definitely get your Mystic Orb, and also get these, because it will give you a little bit more max health, stamina, and Magicka, and you will also restore a little bit more when you take a synergy. Very important passives, just grab them as well. We don't need anything in assault or support. Obviously you want to get your racial skills. Top race for, well, all kinds of DPS at the moment would be Khajiit, I think. And then after that, High Elf and Dark Elf, pretty much pretty close to each other. There's not much difference there. So yeah, top race choices would be Khajiit, High Elf, and Dark Elf. And whatever you get there, you definitely want to grab all of your racial skill lines. The Khajiit's got more crit damage. The Dark Elf I really enjoy because of the weapon and spell damage bonus here, and also the max Magicka and stamina bonus here, almost 2k. And then the last thing you want to get is medicinal use. When you're using your potions, they last 30% longer. Okay, so much for the passives. Done with that. Now let's just quickly look, have a look at the skill tree. There are some things you might want to get. Unrelenting Grip is a fiery chain that does not cost anything in boss fights. So people have used it as a spammable, sort of, just doing 3 whips and then the 3 chains and then the backflip whip, because you cannot pull a boss. So the cost of the ability will be restored, so it's very good for sustain. Plus it's also sometimes nice if you want to help your tank pull things in. If you're, say, playing with a new tank, or your tank just asks you in a trial, hey, can you chain these guys in? Sometimes it happens, so it is a nice optional skill to have leveled up. Over here we've got volatile armor. It's not really important for DPS. It's a bit of like a shield. You gain major resolve, extra physical and spell resistance, but yeah, you don't really need that. Burning Talons though is sort of an AoE flame damage thing, where you summon these claws out of the ground that will immobilize enemies and deal flame damage. A few patches back, when Elfbane was really good, this skill was actually used in most of the meta rotations as well, so it is something you can level up if you wanted to. Then we've got the Dragon Blood Morph here, which will just heal you for about 9k, and also grant you major fortitude, increasing your health recovery. So this is a self-heal you could slot in, say, solo content situations. Over here we've got Magma Shell. This is not really necessary as a DPS, at least as long as you have a healer and a tank. It might be good for solo content because it will limit all the incoming damage to 3% of your max health and deal flame damage to enemies around you for 12 seconds, so you're pretty much invincible for 12 seconds. And yeah, it might come in handy in some solo content, maybe if you're not too familiar with the class yet and you need a oh shit button where you can just be invincible for a while to get your resources back or run away or whatever. It's also a nice skill to have. You want to get Elemental Rage, definitely, because sometimes there is content where bosses are stacked on each other and you want to deal damage to all of them. So this is a very good ultimate to level up. And then also Force Pulse, the Morph for Force Shock, which is a really nice spammable for content where you cannot use the Molten Whip. So this could be a spammable then. This deals flame damage, frost damage, and shock damage. Alright, so much for that. I think that's all these skills you need on a Magicka Dragonknight. Well, Inner Light, obviously, just for having it slotted and getting an extra maximum Magicka increase by 5%. I'm not using this on this setup because I have the shield here, because I'd rather survive than have a bit more Magicka. But as I said before, if you're in a trials group that's really good and really well set up and you trust your healers and you don't need your shield and you know you won't need your shield, then you can just slot in a light here for extra max Magicka. And obviously a bit of a damage buff by that as well. Okay, that is all the skills and passives we need. Now, let's take a look at the sets we've got on. Starting out with the body set of Zen's Redress. This comes from the Lair of Marcilok dungeon. It gives us 124 Magicka recovery, 124 spell damage, 1000 max Magicka. And then our light attacks apply the touch of Zens to enemies for 20 seconds, and enemies with the touch of Zen take an additional 1% more damage for each damage over time effect you've placed on them, up to 5%. So we need 5 damage over time effects that we can place on the enemy to fully benefit from the touch of Zen set, and that will make the enemies take 5% more damage in general. Now, looking at our skills, I'll quickly show you which ones these are. We've got Burning Embers, which counts towards Zens. We've got Scalding Rune, which counts towards Zens. We've got the Barb Trap, which counts towards Zens. And we've got Engulfing Flames, which counts towards Zens. Now, this is only 4, but also remember that Burning Embers will put the burning status effect on the enemy, and this also counts as a dot towards Zen. So that makes 5 already, plus then we're running poisons on our front bar, and that will be a 6th one. So just to be safe, you will definitely have a really good uptime on Zens with this set. Now, Zens, yeah, as I said, comes from Lair of Marcilok, and it will, as long as you have these 5 damage over time effects on the enemy at all times, it will cause the enemy or the boss to take 5% more damage from any source, also from all of your team members. The next set we're running is Martial Knowledge. This adds max Magicka, spell damage, plus while your stamina is below 50%, your light attacks cause enemies to take 8% additional damage for 5 seconds. So each time you're on your front bar and you do a light attack for 8 seconds, then the enemies will take an additional 5 for 5 seconds the enemies will take an additional 8% damage. You'll have a 3-second downtime because it can only occur every 8 seconds, but it's definitely a good way to keep an extra debuff, sort of, or an extra damage buff. Well, yeah, a debuff on the boss more. Now, if you count that all together, by the way, the body pieces are all in Divines. I forgot to say that. And then we've got the Jewelry and Bloodthirsty with spell damage glyphs, and the Inferno Staff of Martial Knowledge Imprecise with poisons on them, or a flame glyph. If you don't want to run poisons, you can also just use the flame glyph. You'll still have your 5 dots that count towards Zens up. The poison would just be a 6th one, just to be safe. Backbar weapon is obviously the Maelstrom's Inferno Staff infused with a weapon and spell damage glyph. This will cause all of our light and heavy attacks to deal additional damage to enemies inside of our Wall of Elements. Now, our Wall of Elements will always be down, so the boss will be in here, or the enemies, and all the light attacks and heavy attacks we do in our rotation in between the skills will do extra damage. You don't really need the perfected version here. It only has a spell penetration bonus, which doesn't really do much. So the normal version is just fine. And then for our monster set, we'll use the new Encratis Behemoth set. This comes from the new dungeon Black Drake Willa, and it's a really cool set that plays super well together with the Magicka Dragonknight. It increases our max Magicka for an extra 1000 about, and then it says dealing flame damage grants you Behemoth's aura for 12 seconds that reaches up to 12 meters. You and up to 11 group members, so your full raid group in the aura reduce flame damage taken by 5%, and enemies inside of the aura increase their flame damage taken by 5%. This effect can occur every 15 seconds, so also a 3-second downtime in here, because it lasts 12 and it can occur every 15. But this is a real buff machine setup for trials. Now, if you count that all together, with our skill here, Engulfing Flames, we will cause all enemies to take 10% more flame damage. So that's 10% more flame damage here Then we're using Zens, which will cause them to take 5% more general damage, well, from all kinds of sources. So 10% more flame damage, 5% more damage in general taken, 5% more flame damage taken again, added to the 10% from the engulfing flames on the Encrates Behemoth set. And then with martial knowledge, enemies will take an additional 8% general damage as well. So as long as you keep your dots up and you keep your rotation up and you're in there with your group and the boss is in the aura of your monster helmet, you will increase the group's damage by a huge amount. The flame damage by 10% and 5%, and then the normal damage from all kinds of sources by 8%, your martial knowledge, and also by 5% presents. So this is a really nice group buff setup for trials. You can really help your group get a lot more damage out of what they do. Okay, so we'll look at the rotation real quick, because one thing is important. As you've noticed in martial knowledge, your stamina has to be under 50%. So before you start the fight, you might want to do a couple of roll dodges just to get under the 50. And then when you start your rotation and you're noticing that your stamina goes up over 50, you just do a bash or two just to get your stamina lower again. Okay, the rotation in general will be fairly simple. So it's a static one on the back bar. We're starting out with Blockade, Trap, Flames of Oblivion, Breath, and then Swap. This will always be the same. Front bar, we're doing Burning Embers, Backflip Whip, 2 more whips. And the first time around, we will do Eruption and Rune Swap. Now back bar. Back bar is again Blockade, Trap, Flames of Oblivion, Breath, again Burning Embers, Backflip Whip. This time around we'll do 3 whips and leave out Eruption because it still lasts, and then the flame, the Scalding Rune. So the first time around you'll do Backflip Whip and then 2 whips and Eruption, and the next time around you'll do Backflip Whip, 3 whips, and no Eruption. I'll just quickly show you that. Blockade, Trap, Oblivion, Breath, Embers, Backflip, 1, 2, Eruption, Rune Swap. Blockade, Trap, Oblivion, Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers, Backflip Whip, 3 whips. Rune Swap. And then this time around we will recast Eruption, so only 2 whips after the backflip. Eruption, Rune. Breath, backflip, Eruption still going, so we'll do 3 whips. And then Scalding Rune, swap. This rotation will be the same no matter what setup you're using. So it doesn't matter if you're on the buff setup with Zen's Martial Knowledge and Encrates, or if you're on your normal DPS setup, if you don't need to bring all these group buffs, or maybe a healer's wearing Zen's and Martial Knowledge. There are still some healers out there who bring these sets. So obviously if someone else is already running Martial Knowledge and Zen's Redress, you don't need to do that. So in that case you just swap to the very normal DPS setup. We'll go with Mother Sorrow Buddy. Where is it? There. And then we'll go with Burning Spellweave or Ceroria for the front bar weapon and jewelry. The damage output is actually pretty close to each other. You do miss the Minor Slayer bonus from the trial set Ceroria, but this will increase the spell damage of your flame damage abilities by 470. Ceroria, I think, gets a full spell damage bonus of like what is it, maybe 500 now or so, around 500. So Ceroria is a bit stronger, but you'll have to stand inside of the circle that Ceroria produces. So if you look at the set, you get spell damage. You do get the Minor Slayer bonus, increasing your damage done to trial monsters. Max Magicka, plus dealing direct damage with a single target attack creates a ring of fire beneath you for 10 seconds. Can occur every 10 seconds. And standing inside of the ring grants you a stack of Ceroria's boon for 5 seconds, which increases your spell damage by 52, 10 stacks max, so 520. It's a bit more spell damage than Burning Spellweave, plus it also counts for other stuff, not just for flame abilities. So the set in general is a bit stronger, but you will have to stand inside of the ring that will not move with you. So the ring will be on the ground for 10 seconds, and you'll have to stand inside of it. And in some trials, that's just not possible because there's a lot of movement going on. So Ceroria on the front bar and jewelry would be your top DPS option paired with the Mother's Sorrow buddy. But Burning Spellweave is almost as strong, and it does not require you to stand in place and be still. So I would definitely take the poisons off though for that setup, because we don't need the status effects. And then you'll just have the precise Burning Spellweave or Ceroria staff and your Bloodthirsty jewelry with spell damage glyphs. So this would be your normal trial setup if you're not in a raid group. We can quickly check out the stats here as well. This will push up your spell critical way up to 64%, and your Magicka recovery will still be 1500, which is nice. And your spell damage will, here it says 3889, but you will add these 470 or 520 from either Burning Spellweave or Ceroria, so it will go up quite a lot as well. So this is a stronger general setup if you don't want to be that buff machine in the trial, if you're just running dungeons or stuff like that. For a monster helmet, you can actually still wear Inkratis. Like, even on this setup, I would leave it on, because after all, it will grant you an extra 5% flame damage to any enemy that's inside of the aura. So it's still a very strong option. If you don't want to use that though, obviously you can always go with Sans, which is the top DPS option. It just gives you spell critical and creates this beam of fire that deals flame damage. So Sans would be a nice option. However, Sans does not work in Sunspire, for example. So if you go to Sunspire or just want to have a different options, Dommy House is also a very nice option because it gives you Magicka and stamina. Plus, when you deal damage, you create a ring of fire beneath you that will deal flame damage and also grant you an extra 289 spell damage over 15 seconds. So this is also a very good option. And then if you don't want to use either of these, there's other stuff like Grostar or Maw of the Infernal from Vaults of Madness. That's Grostar. Just creates a ring of fire underneath you that deals flame damage to people. It's also a very nice set, especially in AoE situations. Or then in Banished Cells 2, the Maw of the Infernal set, which will summon the Maw, the Daedroth that breathes fire on the enemies. However, this set is not... Some people don't really like this set in trials because oftentimes the Maws stand in front of the tanks and then they can't really see when they're being heavy attacked and all. But yeah, these are your options. Okay, last but not least, a solo option. Now for solo play, I would probably not want to be right in the face of the enemy, because, well, oftentimes in solo play, you'll just have to dodge and get away a little bit and do more AoE damage. So this is where I definitely use Force Pulse as a spammable in the solo setup. And maybe also use Channel Acceleration instead of Barb Trap, but that's personal preference. And then since we're not using the whip on the front bar, we don't need the whip on the back bar as well. Meaning we can slot a self-heal here in that position, or any other skill that you like really if you don't need a self-heal. For the solo setup in general, I would stick to Burning Spellweave on the jewelry and the staff, just because it's the strongest option and you will move a lot, so Ceroria probably won't make sense in a solo or arena setup. We'll still use the Maelstrom Inferno stuff on the back bar. However, we will go with False Gods in that case, just to get that Minor Slayer bonus. We'll still have 2 crit bonuses, and the cost of all our Magicka abilities will be reduced by 8%, plus when an enemy dies we'll restore Magicka and gain Major Expedition, which will make our movement speed faster. So this is very nice for your sustain. You can really get a lot of Magicka back every time you kill things. Your skills will not cost as much as they usually would, and you'll also get the movement speed bonus in case you have to run away from a boss or something inside of, say, Vateshran Hollows or the Maelstrom Arena. Now, one thing you could do with this setup, the solo setup, is lose your monster set and use the Ring of the Pale Order. So you will use the Ring of the Pale Order in one of these slots and replace the shoulders or head by a Burning Spellweave shoulder or head. So you have 5 False Gods, 5 Burning Spellweave, 2 from the staff, 2 from the jewelry, and 1 from either the head or the shoulders. And then use the Ring of the Pale Order here, which is a antiquity thing that says you restore 18% of the damage you deal as health up to a maximum of 2,750 health per attack. You cannot be healed by anyone but yourself. This plays very well with solo stuff. Obviously, you'd have to get it in Bloodthirsty as well with a spell damage glyph on it, not a stamina recovery glyph. But you can recreate it once you've found it for 25 transmute crystals, so it doesn't really cost the world. And this will constantly heal you when you're inside of Maelstrom Arena or Vateshran Hollows or stuff like that, and you do damage. As long as you deal damage, you'll get health back. So this might really be worth it using over a monster set. And then you'll have Burning Spellweave on either the shoulders or the head. And then for the other piece, just use one piece of monster set that gives you a nice bonus, say either something like this that gives you a Magicka bonus, or something like Iceheart that gives you a spell critical bonus, or yeah, that's probably what you want to go for, either a Magicka or a spell critical bonus, or something like Slimecry crit chance bonus. You know, anything where the one piece, the one item bonus is good for Magicka DPS. It doesn't really matter what you put on there then. I'd probably just leave this one on and get an extra 1k Magicka. Good enough for me. And then I'd have the Burning Spellweave shoulders and the Ring of the Pale Order here to heal myself. So False Gods, Burning Spellweave, one piece monster set, one piece Burning Spellweave up here, and then the Ring of the Pale Order. That would be the solo setup with Force Pulse, your shield, your self heal, and your source of minor force. And then you could probably put the ultimate, the Destro ultimate here for solo content as well. That might be better. But that's really all your choice. Okay, so this was the full guide for Magicka Dragonknight for the Flames of Ambition patch. I hope you have fun with the class, you enjoy it. We'll quickly look at the champion points. There's another video where I explain champion points more in detail, so I'm just gonna say you start out here with gold fingers. Just put, if you don't have so many champion points, just put as much in as you need to unlock the next bit where you want to go. So put 10 in here, put 10 in here, put 10 in here, put 10 in here, and then you've made your way up to Treasure Hunter, which is the first thing I would get, so you get better loot from treasure chests. And then I go down here. The second slottable will be Rationer, increasing the duration of our food or drinks. And then the third thing will be Liquid Efficiency. Whenever we use a potion or a poison, we have a 10% to not actually consume it. This is very good because our spell power pods or alliance spell draughts will not get used so much. And then Steed's Blessing for the general movement speed out of combat. These are my preferred 4 slottables. And as I said, just start out here and put as many points in to get up here and then get down here. You'll have to make your way there, sort of. And then just fill up whatever you can fill up. It's always nice to get more gold and stuff like that. Blue Tree, you definitely want Eldritch Insight for more max Magicka. You don't have to fill it up either. 10 points will be enough. You want precision for your critical chance rating to get extra crit chance. And then in this subtree, extended might, you want piercing for your offensive penetration, flawless ritual for the chance to apply magical status effects to be higher, and then in the end, war mage for an extra spell damage to your flame attacks. Now these are only passives. For the slottables, I would choose Deadly Aim, increases your damage done for single target attacks, Thaumaturge for damage over time attacks, and then Biting Aura for area of effect attacks. And then either of these two, either Fighting Finesse, which will give you 10% more crit damage in general, or Backstabber, which will give you 15% crit damage, but it will only count against enemies you are flanking, so only if you're on the side or behind of the enemy. If you're in Sunspire and you're standing in front of the dragon, this won't work. So that will be a good time to use Fighting Finesse. As you can see here, I'm trying to level both of them up to 50, just missing 3 more points, and then I can just swap between them depending on what trial I'm doing. For the red stuff, we will go with Boundless Vitality for extra health, Ironclad for extra armor, Rejuvenation for extra Magicka recovery and also health and stamina recovery, and Siphoning Spells restore 300 Magicka per stage whenever we kill an enemy, so I'll get 1500 Magicka back every time I kill an enemy. This will be the 4 slottables, and then the other stuff that's nice to have is Hero's Vigor for extra max health, so you can get to your 22 or 23k health, Mystic Tenacity, which reduces the duration of elemental status effect applied to you, obviously Sprinter and Hasty, so you can run faster and it will cost you less. And then Tumbling for more roll dodging, because I tend to roll dodge quite a lot, especially in solo content or even dungeons. There's other stuff you can get to later on, stuff like reducing the cost of break free, reducing the cost of block, increasing the amount of damage you can block, reducing the cost of bash, even though I would probably not use that if I was wearing Zens, because I kind of want to stay under my 50% stamina and not have to bash like 20 times to get there. But yeah, all of that, just look around. These are the slottables anyway, Siphoning Spells and the 3 up here. And that will be it. I'm really hoping you enjoy the Magicka Dragonknight. It might not be the strongest class right now, but it is definitely a buff machine if you want to bring it to a trial. It can boost everybody's damage up so high. And even if not, if you're just going with Mother Sorrow, Burning Spell with Ceroria for normal content, or for solo content with the False God setup and the Ring of the Pale Order, it's still good enough to do any content in the game, and I really enjoy the class. I think it's a very cool class, very good skills, very good visuals. I hope you do too, and I'll see you next time.